In today's video, let's practice some sample questions for your PRINCE2 Foundation exam. Hi, I am Ray and I'm an authorized trainer for PRINCE2 certification, and I have helped many aspiring project managers in their careers to become certified project managers. Now in this video today, we will be solving some medium to high difficulty level PRINCE2 Foundation exam questions, which will help you firstly to understand the genuine look and feel of the PRINCE2 Foundation level exam questions if you are planning to write the exam anytime soon, and secondly, if you are preparing for the PRINCE2 exam already, you might use today's session to assess how well you are prepared for the exam. So get a pen and a paper and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, guys, please pause the video and try to answer the question first before we solve this together. Right, so let's understand what this question is really asking, right? So we need to identify the correct definition of culture in a project management context in the scenario of a PRINCE2 project. So let's start with option B, okay? Now option B is incorrect, okay? Because this is actually describing a change or change management, okay? Not the culture. So think about it. When we talk about transitioning from current state to the target state, we are talking about transformation activities, right? Not the underlying values and the behaviors of people, okay? So this doesn't really fit, okay, in the overall context of a culture in any project management, right? So definitely an incorrect answer choice. Right, now option C is also incorrect, right? Because this might seem relevant on the surface, but this is the textbook definition of a stakeholder, okay, not the culture. So PRINCE2 uses this exact wording to define who stakeholders are. Culture, if you think about it, isn't about who's involved, right? It's about those who are involved, how they think and work together. So definitely an incorrect answer choice. Now let's look at option D. Right, so this is also incorrect, right? Because this doesn't make sense at all for the culture of an overall organization. So this sounds more like a role definition, right? The responsibilities and functions someone has on a project. So culture isn't about what you do, right? It's about how and why you do it based on the shared beliefs of your entire project team, or let's say part of your overall organization. So the correct answer to this question is option A, because this is really spot on. Because culture is fundamentally about the collective mindset of an organization or a team. So if you really think about it, when we talk about culture in PRINCE2, we are referring to those invisible forces that shape the behavior, right? So we are basically talking about this is how we do things around here in this project team, right? So that kind of a mentality. Okay. So for example, imagine two organizations delivering similar projects, right? One has a culture of innovation and risk taking, where trying new approaches is really celebrated, right? The other one has a culture of strict compliance and risk aversion, where the requirement to follow established procedures is paramount. Okay, same project type, completely different cultures driving different behaviors and decisions. So the correct answer to this question is option A.
Next, let's move on to question number 2.
Right, so question number 2, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to answer it first before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's understand what this question is testing, okay? So we need to distinguish between different types of activities in PRINCE2 projects. Specifically, what constitutes a management activity versus leadership or delivery activities, okay? Now, if you look at option A, that's an incorrect answer choice, okay? Because this is more of a delivery activity or a facilitation task. So when you are gathering requirements and facilitating workshops, you are actually working on creating the products, okay? So in this case, specifications or requirements documentation. So it's hands-on work, okay, which is linked to project delivery, not management oversight. So definitely an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option B because that's a tricky one, and that is also an incorrect answer choice. Okay, because this might seem like management on the surface, but if you really think about it, this is actually a leadership activity. Okay, now in Prince 2, it is very, very crystal clear in terms of what is a leadership, what is a delivery. Okay, so those kind of stuff. So you need to understand these kind of nuances very well if you are preparing for the Prince 2 exam. So you are engaging with people, ensuring alignment and checking their understanding, right, as a part of this option. Okay. So leadership is about inspiring, about guiding and maintaining team cohesion. Okay. Now management, according to Prince 2, on the other hand, is about controls, authority and delegation. So option B is an incorrect answer choice as well. Now let's look at option D, which is also incorrect, okay? Because motivation is the textbook of leadership trait of a person, right? So when you are inspiring people, you are encouraging them, keeping the spirits up during tough times, that's leadership in action, okay? It's about the human side of projects and not the control mechanisms, which is typically the management side of projects, okay? So that is why option D is also an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option C, because this is classic Prince2 management. Okay. Work packages are the formal mechanism by which the project manager delegates work to the team managers in a Prince2 project. Okay. And this is really a management because it involves formal authorization and delegation. It involves setting clear tolerances, which are your control boundaries. It also involves defining what needs to be delivered and when, and it also establishes accountability not only with the project manager but also with the team manager. Okay, so for example, imagine if you are managing a software development project, right? So you agree with the development team manager that they'll deliver 3 system modules within 4 weeks with a budget tolerance of let's say plus minus 10% and a time tolerance of let's say plus minus 5 days for argument's sake. Okay, now that is management, right? Because you are setting controls, you are delegating authority, and you are establishing the framework for delivery. Okay, you are not doing the work yourself, which is the actual delivery part of it, or neither you are inspiring people, which is the leadership part of it as well. Okay, so you are managing through structured delegation. So the correct answer to this question is option C.
I hope you are enjoying the session, right? Please press the like button if that's the case, and also make sure you subscribe to my channel Project Mastery with Ray if you wish to view more of such educational content. And now let's move on to question number 3.
Right, so let's move on to question number 3. You can pause the video here and try to answer the question first before we solve this together. Right, so this question is testing your understanding of Prince2 terminology, specifically what we call as an event that needs active management attention on a project. The keywords here, if you really think about it, are event and requires project management consideration. Okay, very, very important. So let's look at the answer choices. Okay, now option A, change budget, is incorrect. Okay, because you see that this isn't an event at all, is it? Okay, a change budget is actually an authorized amount of money that is set aside for implementing approved changes. Okay, so think about it. It's a financial resource and not an event that happens, right? It's something you use to respond to events. Okay, and it's definitely not the event itself. So an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option B, project baseline. Right, so this is also not an event, right? The project baseline is actually a reference point, okay? It is the current approved versions of your management products and your specialist products, right? It is what you really measure any changes or deviations against, right? So imagine you are building a house and you have got your approved architectural drawings, okay? And that might be your baseline, okay? The drawings themselves aren't an event, okay, requiring consideration. Okay, they are the standard you are working to. Fair enough. So that is why option B is an incorrect answer choice. Now let's look at option C, which is also incorrect. Okay, because this is captured knowledge or learning from project experiences. Lessons are recorded insights, okay? They are definitely not events happening in real time that need immediate management action. You document lessons to help future projects, right? or even this project itself as well. Okay, but a lesson itself isn't an occurrence demanding your attention right now. Okay, so an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option D, which is issue, and that is really spot on. Okay, so in PRINCE2 terms, an issue is defined as an unplanned event that has occurred and requires management action. So see the keywords. The event is a keyword, and requires management action is also a keyword which the question is trying to test you on. Okay, so think of a real world scenario as well, right? So let's say you are managing an office relocation project and suddenly your key vendor or supplier goes bankrupt, okay, or insolvent. So that's an issue, okay? It is an event that has just happened. You didn't plan for it, you can't change it, and you absolutely need to take management action to address it, okay? And that's precisely what PRINCE2 issue management is all about. So the correct answer to this question is option D.
Right, next, question number 4.
Right, so question number 4, please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so let's get started. So this question is testing your understanding of PRINCE2 processes and what get produced during each one, okay? So specifically, it's asking about the managing product delivery process, okay? And this is where team managers and their teams do the actual work. The keyword here, if you think about it, is created, right? What actually gets made in that particular process, right? So let's look at the options one by one. Let's look at option B first, okay, work package, because that's an incorrect answer choice. Work packages aren't created during managing product delivery process at all, okay? So think about it logically. The work package is created by the project manager, right? During the controlling a stage process. Very, very important. The project manager creates it and then passes it to the team manager to execute. So the work package actually exists even before the managing product delivery process begins. It's the input, okay, not the output. So definitely an incorrect answer choice. Now option C, stage plan for, let's say, the initiation stage as part of this example, is also an incorrect answer choice, because this is created way back, I would say, okay, during the starting up a project process. The project manager creates this initial stage plan before the project is even formally authorized, okay? So it's got nothing to do with managing product delivery. So an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option D, project product description. An incorrect answer choice as well, okay? Because this is also created during starting up a project process and it is then refined during initiating a project process. So it describes what the entire project will deliver, and it's a planning document and it is not something created during the actual delivery work. So if you have not watched my other videos on this channel, Projects with Ray, which talks about the principles, the processes and the practices of PRINCE2, I would strongly recommend that you go and watch those videos first before you come back and try to solve these questions, because that way you will get a very foundational understanding of the core principles of PRINCE2 before you solve sample questions. So the correct answer to this question is option A, which are the specialist products. So managing product delivery is all about team manager and their team executing the work package and creating the actual deliverables. So these are the specialist products, right? The tangible outputs your project exists to create. So imagine if you are building a mobile application, right? So during managing product delivery, your development team actually creates the application itself, okay? The user interface, the backend code, the database, these are all specialist products, okay? Or let's say examples of what a specialist product could be in a scenario of building a mobile application. And that's the whole purpose of this process, which is to produce the actual things your project promised to deliver, okay? So that is why the correct answer to this question is option A.
And finally, question number 5. I hope you are taking notes, okay? Because I'm sure that you are learning something new at least as part of your PRINCE2 exam preparation as part of today's session, right?
Right, so question number 5, please pause the video and try to solve the question first before we do this together. Right, so this question is about PRINCE2's quality technique and when specific quality measures get defined. The quality technique has three main steps, right, in PRINCE2: planning quality, controlling quality, and accepting the products. So the question is asking specifically about the qualitative measures, okay, which are the descriptive requirements like, let's say, user friendly or easy to use. Okay, so these are qualitative metrics rather than numeric ones, which are quantitative metrics. Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. So option A, accepting products, incorrect. Okay, well, you see, this happens at the very end of the quality life cycle. And this is when the acceptance authority reviews the finished product and decides whether to accept it or not. Now think about it, by this point, the measures should already be defined, right? You can't check if a product meets requirements if you haven't even specified that yet, right? So option A is incorrect. Let's look at option B, describing the quality management approach. Incorrect, okay? Because this is about the overall framework for how quality will be managed on the project. It describes the techniques, the standards, the tools, and the responsibilities for quality management across the entire project, right? But it doesn't get into the specific measures for individual products, okay? It's too high level for that if you think about it. And that is why option B is also incorrect. What about option C, performing quality control? Okay, it's an incorrect answer choice as well, because this is where you are actually checking products against their quality specifications, right? So you are testing, you are inspecting, you are reviewing, all good stuff which you are doing. But here is the thing, right? You can't check against the measures that do not exist yet, right? Quality control uses the measures that were already defined earlier, and you apply them as part of this process to see if you have matched those requirements or not. Okay, so you do not create those requirements as part of performing quality control. So that is why option C is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option D, creating product descriptions, and it's spot on. So this is part of the quality planning step, and it's exactly where both quantitative and qualitative measures are identified and documented. So in PRINCE2 terms, qualitative measures translate requirements into descriptive terms. Okay, so for example, if you are developing a mobile application, let's talk the same example from question number 4. You might specifically say that it should be intuitive for first-time users, or it might be visually appealing, or it should have these branding colors, etc., etc. Okay, so these qualitative measures get captured in product descriptions alongside the quantitative ones, like let's say the loading time of a page should be under 3 seconds. Okay, so that is a quantitative measure. So here is another real world example. So imagine if you are building a hotel reception area, right? So in the product description, you will include qualitative measures like, let's say, creates a welcoming atmosphere, or let's say reflects luxury brand standards, alongside the quantitative measures like, let's say, accommodates at least 50 people, or 2.8 meters of ceiling height. Okay, so those are the quantitative measures. And it's important to define both these type of measures during this step so everyone knows what they are building towards, right? So the correct answer to this question is option D, which is creating product descriptions.
I hope you found the session helpful. In case you are planning to prepare for the PRINCE2 exam and you wish to enroll in one of my training programs, please drop me an email and one of my team members will definitely reach out to you. I am Ray, an authorized trainer for PRINCE2 by PeopleCert, and I look forward to meet you again in the next video.